Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host, Gary Morgan. With me, as always, my good friend Jim Stam. Jim, before you say hello, I just want to apologize that I didn't work hard enough to get us labeled as industry plants. I'm very sorry.
Well, that's what the new year is for, sir. There's always time to get corralled into some weird conspiracy that I'm sure will keep popping up from time to time because Twitter is weird.
Yep. Doug says Happy New Yins. I like that. Mm-hmm. And yo from Seth Johnson. How you guys doing? Thanks for joining us today. So we're going to talk a little bit about the team itself, some of the camp battles we think are going to happen. We're going to start talking about this roster a little bit more full than we have in the past. We're going to talk a little about it more as though this is the clay we're working with. And I'm not doing that on purpose, Jim. It's not that I don't think they're going to add something else or add more pieces or even more muddled NRI mess to the whole puzzle before we start putting it together. But I think if you start looking at it now, it paints a certain picture of what's here. And as I started doing this, Jim, it wasn't as bad as I guess I had worked myself up into believing it was. I actually kind of think they're poised to take a step. I feel like they outkicked their coverage a little bit in 2023. They underperformed last year drastically in some areas that I think are probably going to rebound pretty good. It kind of makes me feel like they're going to get past 500 with or without additions.
Well, they excuse me, get all choked up here talking about the Pirates. What I will say is I think the better thing this year is at least they have some more options, right? Like, I think you can go around and, hey, you may say they're not all going to work, and they won't. But at least there are some more options to kind of pick and choose from if one guy were to step up. Right. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't have serious needs. And that doesn't mean that there are certain things that they're going to have to improve on, regardless of whether it's internal or not. But at least they have more guys to pick and choose from that aren't complete bottom of the barrel type dudes that they shouldn't be even entertaining right now, and they don't have to.
Yeah, not really your traditional reclamation projects either. Before I go any further here, I see the Pirate Queen Banshee's here. Happy New Year, Yins. First of all, it's been a while since you could make it live, Queen. Thank you. And also happy birthday to the Queen.
Yes.
I kind of can't believe that your husband allowed you to be 40. My wife is eternally 39. I'm just saying. So,
and 40 hit us many moons ago. So,
well, us, not my wife. Let's not go down that road.
You and me. I'm talking about us too.
Right. But anyway, I mean, I look at the team though, Jim, and I guess, man, I've been very focused on what they need to get and everything. And I think that still stands. I would love for them to get a corner outfielder I could really feel good about. Preferably somebody that would kind of beef up the middle of the order, something that I can really believe in. The way I tried to put together the lineup myself, and maybe we can get into that if we get bored towards the end of the show.
Sure.
But the way I tried to put together the lineup, I found it really hard to fill any kind of leadoff role, just based on who I think is going to make the team. And there's no natural cleanup hitter. So, I mean, it really needs to be a corner outfielder with some thump if they're going to get anything that's going to move the needle at all on this team. And even then, no matter what they did this year, you're going to rely on internal options 90%. And Ben Cherington's been very upfront about that. I mean, he has said that repeatedly. People don't like to hear it, so they kind of like push it off and hope it's gamesmanship. But I think in this case, he's just kind of telling you what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think, you make the point about the deficiencies. Leadoff is kind of like first base for the Pirates, it seems. Like, it just, there's never a guy that you just can kind of slot into that.
Now, or they bring one in and then he winds up somehow being one of their better hitters and has to bat lower in the order, right?
Right.
Like, remember back to the Kenny Lofton days, like there's a leadoff hitter, right? And he ended up hitting like fifth instead.
Well, yeah. Well, even you take Kutch, right? Like, he's pretty damn decent there. His on base percentage, the way he works, counts, but he's starting to get up near Queen's age now. So we can't. Yeah, right. I don't know. Do we want to bat Queen leadoff at this point? So he ends up.
She's got more energy than most people I see in the seventh inning. So maybe
this is true.
Yeah.
And then you'd like to see because here's the thing that does worry me. Like, you mentioned about going and getting somebody that has some like a heavy hitter type guy. You look at the lineup and you look at the options for that lineup, and they are still going to be short on power, right? Like the home runs.
That's the thing. They're short on just about anything that you want to count on. They're short on. And the reason that's the case, not only because they're cheap, but they're building this thing internally, right? All of their best power options are like in year 2 or 3 or just about to kind of crack in, like besides Brian Reynolds, right? Brian Reynolds is kind of your established 25 to 30 home run guy, right? Well, then you've got O'Neal Cruz. Last year, most of us before the season thought, oh, this is a 40 home run guy for sure, right? This year, last year, he comes back from injury. We saw the struggles, a lot of different issues going on there. It's real hard for me to sit here and tell you that I don't think that kid can pop 30 home runs, right? You don't feel like you've seen the best of Nick Gonzalez, but it's definitely a question mark. You have no idea what you're going to get out of Ke'Bryan Hayes. It's definitely a question mark. You have no idea who's even going to play right field. If it's Jack Sawinski and he has that power stroke back, there's 25 home runs you're not counting on because you wrote him off for dead. There's a lot of ifs on a team like that when you're going to use players like that. And I think that's, from a free agent standpoint, nobody was ever going to be happy, even if they spent some money, because they weren't going to fill all these holes. At best, I think you're going to get a corner outfielder. They're not filling shortstop, I don't think. Not only is there nothing out there that looks good to me, even available via trade, it's a stretch to say Ha-Sung Kim could do it. You got that international Ha-Sung Kim that's coming over that doesn't even look like they're interested in. And then Luis Arraez hasn't played it in a long time.
Yeah, I to me, it's the power that jumps out. It's glaring still. Like, it's like building an NBA team without 3-point shooters. Like, you know what I mean? Like, like the league is built on 3-point shooting. Well, baseball's built on, hitting the ball over the fence. And so, you can point to certain guys. Do I think O'Neal Cruz is going to hit 30 home runs this year? Yeah, I think he will. Brian, you can pencil in for 25 right now. I mean, he almost hits that number on the dot every time.
Yep.
But then you start saying, well, maybe this, if that, and that's the problem.
Is Joey Bart going to hit the same pace of home runs he hit last year? That would be crazy if he did.
Is Henry Davis going
to hit? Right. I mean, this is what we're going to talk about today, guys. Yeah. That's what we're saying. That and acknowledging the Queen's birthday here. That's what got us a little overtime here. Let's run our commercial and come back, Jim, and hit it hard, right? Because obviously, once we get the ball rolling down the hill, it's pretty hard to stop it.
Yeah, we got lots to talk about.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Jim, let's start with something fun. Let's go outfield first, right? Let's
fun.
No.
Fun?
The reason I want to do the outfield first is because I looked at it a little different. I didn't look at it as just three outfielders. I'm definitely looking at it as center field capable, right field, left field. I think if they had their druthers, Brian Reynolds would play right field every day. I think they wanted to do that last spring. I think that they can. Glad to have you with us, Greg and Doug and Seth and everybody else and Bridge to October. I don't acknowledge you guys enough in here, and I'm sorry. Hello, everybody.
We get tunnel vision.
We get going. All right, so Brian Reynolds, I would move to right field. That would be my assumption that they'd like to do that. So I would like to think most people that they would want to put in left field could do it. There's some challenges there, though, right? Center field, we got to start with the capability list. You got O'Neill Cruz. He's backed up by really nobody that has the capability to play center field except for Brian Reynolds, who could do it capably, but not be flashy or anything. But he could cover off days if you had to have just one guy. We've already seen them use Jack Sawinski there. Joshua Palacios, we saw them try. I'd love to never see it again, personally.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to toss in there my personal belief that Jared Triolo could play center field. I actually think Jared Triolo could play every position but catcher. And I really mean that. And I think he could do them all well.
I think he probably could emergency catch, actually.
I think he probably could too, but I've seen him play outfield at least, and it was good.
Right.
So I think that's somebody I would keep at least as an option if you're just talking about who's on the roster. And then depth, you've got Ji-Hwan Bae. That's his only path, really, right, Jim?
Yeah.
Right? Sammy Siani, you have to figure they sent him to Arizona Fall League. He didn't get claimed in the Rule 5. He had a good showing in the Arizona Fall League. I'm not saying he's got a chance to make it out of camp, but he is a prospect that was seen with some promise at some point. He's in the mix. And then you got Matt Gorski, who again has not gotten taken, can more than handle the position, has a ton of power, and all the other warts we talk about every single time we talk about him. Plus, he can play a handy-dandy right-handed first base. So, and, he's got to be getting to like last shot territory, minor league free agent after this year. So, use him or lose him, he's Bly Madras.
Yeah.
That's the center field mix, right?
Yeah, I mean, center field is, what you hope for is O'Neill Cruz plays a nice, healthy 150 games and, sprinkle in a few DH games in there if he needs a rest, and it's not an issue at all. I'm excited to see O'Neill Cruz this year in center field. I think you're going to see a big jump in year 2 with him defensively. I really do. Yeah. I think he'll be comfortable, and and I'm quite sure they're going to really be working with him, going up to the year as far as all the little things that probably they didn't have a lot of time to address with him.
Right.
And
hopefully the ankle is completely healed now, because, we saw towards the end of the season when he started putting his mind to stealing bases, he was racking them up pretty quickly there. And, that would be a nice dimension to his game to get back to. There's an awful lot of last year's O'Neill Cruz that is probably not reflective of what we're hoping to see this year. But until you see otherwise, that's kind of what you have to go with, right?
Yeah, I do think that, when you look at his year in totality, for essentially missing a year, it ended up looking pretty good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, you have to be really encouraged by what you saw from O'Neal Cruz. Missing that kind of time, then still dealing with a little bit of it residually as the year went on. I think that you can't not look back on it with all the factors and think, no, it was a pretty darn good year for someone that didn't have the best situation going into it. So
Doug hopes Cruz is running routes all winter. I agree there.
I think Cruz is going to work a lot of those little things, guys. I really do.
Right. Plus, he does make up for some of the deficiencies in his game in that regard, just with his athleticism.
Sure.
To put up the defensive peripherals he did in that very short amount of time that he actually played, it speaks well for what I think could come, and actually frustrates you a bit that they didn't convince him to do it earlier, because it looks like he could be very special out there.
Yeah. Now, of course, we have to think a little bit about, like, the lapses he had at shortstop. Sometimes it was somewhat mental. Well, center field, you have to play that position really smartly too.
Not only that, they may very well, we'll get into this, but they may very well have created a shortstop hole that lasts all the way to Connor Griffin. So, like, it's not great for other reasons too. So let's put a pin in center field and keep our mind that somebody has to have the capability to play there when Cruz can't. So we do have that list of players that we talked about. So some people are going to make the roster just for the skills of being able to cover certain places. That's something you have to think about. Right field, I would go Brian Reynolds. I'm going to put him there until I see otherwise. I think then you have Jack Palacios, Nick York, Billy Cook, Emmanuel Valdez could all back up. Valdez has probably a better shot to make it as an infielder. His arm is not what, as far as what I'm being told by our friends in Boston, what you would want in the outfield. That said, we have a whole collection of those players. Nick York is in that group too, right? So it could be a weird fit out there, but that's 5 players, 5-6 players I'm not too upset to see at some point, right? Left field's obviously the same mix of players. I'm just going to have to make one of them my starter. So I would go Nick York or Jack Sawinski probably.
Yeah, you look at Jack, right, and you think, man, if they could just get him back on track, and see what it looks like in the spring. He's a guy that, when he's right, is a 20, 25 homer guy. We've seen that. He even adds a little bit on the base paths. He's just an important guy. He's lefty power. Like, if you could, like, earmark, Gary, like, one guy that you're like, man, I really hope that what we saw for a time there can come back, it's him. Like, I circle him. And I know that scares Pirate fans, and maybe it should, but he's the guy that I would point to, that, like, geez, if he could just show up and be the guy we saw, it starts to help solve some problems.
Yeah, like, maybe you can at least, like, kind of close the book on, well, yeah, those 25 or whatever 27 home runs were really nice, but let's hope that he cuts down on this and gets better at this and learns how to do that. And maybe you just go, those 25 home runs are nice. We'll deal with all the other crap until we can replace that.
Yeah, well, yeah, because going back to it, right, you feel like you need the power. There are plenty of guys in Major League Baseball right now that, if you can put the ball out of the park 20 to 30 times, you take ugliness elsewhere. You just do.
You kind of have to.
So, because it's so important.
Like, we just got a comment here from Melman. You can't count on it, though.
No,
absolutely, you can't count on it.
Absolutely not.
That's kind of our whole preamble to the show today. Was there was never going to be a scenario when most of this roster wasn't built just like that out of players that have those questions. You're not going to hear me name any positions when we go through this that don't have a gigantic question mark attached to them, except for Brian Reynolds. He's going to play somewhere. He's going to hit 25 home runs and probably hit 275. You know, like that's Brian Reynolds.
As consistent as they come.
There's your lock. Everything else we're talking about is what they are right now. So I would honestly encourage all of you to kind of just adjust your mind frame just a bit and kind of try to focus more on what is here right now, with the understanding that we still think they're going to go and get more. We still think they could go and get more. This is just if they don't, where are we?
Yeah, well, you're looking at what you have. Like, yeah, they could add something. Probably won't be super sexy. Right. So they're still going to be in the mix regardless of if they add somebody or not.
So let's do call your shot, Jim, because I think it's going to round out our outfield talk a little bit and make some of the people in the chat happy who understandably are saying it's not enough. All right, call your shot tonight is from our, let's see, Brad France says, if we can't pull a trade for immediate outfield help, or even if we can, would you trade a top pitching prospect for a top outfield prospect? Happy New Year. We kind of talked about this a little bit, Jim. We talked about this with the proposed trade to Boston for Weiler Abreu.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little less than a prospect because, Jared Jones is already an established major league pitcher. But would I trade one for an established outfit? Yes, I would. I wouldn't trade one for 2 years of somebody, and it's real hard to get 3 or 4 for somebody without them costing a lot of money. You look at like a guy like Luis Robert. That's really the big get on the outfield market right now, right? You could go and get Taylor Ward. You could go and get what's his face from the Giants, Yastrzemski. You could get somebody along those lines. You could sign a Jesse Winker. None of these guys are doing anything to the win total here. Honestly, you're talking like 1 or 2 wins at best. You're going to get added there. Luis Roberts, your best bet at somebody that could add 4 or 5 if he really took off and was healthy all year. But he's going to cost. Would you pay top pitching prospects? Well, you're not in the conversation if you wouldn't. I mean, you have to.
Yeah, and then if he does become more acquirable, it's only going to be because he's probably not playing well into this season. Like to me, he's a guy that, yeah, if you could get him on a flyer and take a chance, but I just think there's enough there where it would scare me off of. And trust me, like I talk all the time about trade some of the pitching. I don't know that I would do it for Luis Robert. There's too much there that worries me.
I think as this offseason has gone on, and I've looked at these options more and more for what might be out there, I've tried to find some creative ones. Like I even tried to drum up, like, is there a way you could pry away like Byron Buxton from the Twins or something along those lines? They're looking to shed a little payroll too. He's injured a lot. I'm looking for guys with warts because if they don't have them, you're not looking to get rid of a guy that's got 4 or 5 years of control. You're just not. So,
yeah. Well, Gary, this is interesting. It popped into my head right before we came on, and I was like, I wonder if this will be something that would come up or could come up just based on what we're talking about. Do you think that, I think once Luis Ortiz got traded, then all of a sudden the Pirates might have become just a little more reluctant to maybe move some of that pitching just because just seems like that might be the case.
I
Do
think
you think
above Luis Ortiz, they were probably always reluctant to begin with.
right, but then I think it makes it just a little bit like, so I guess my question is like, did they move Luis Ortiz too fast? You know what I mean? To like leave more options open if you wanted to move some pitching. Like to me, I thought, you know what? Maybe they did. Like maybe you'd want to let things play out a little bit more. And that's not really a knock on Spencer Horwitz, because I actually said from the beginning that I kind of like Spencer Horwitz. I'm just wondering if maybe it would have been nice to have the options open a little bit longer. Is that
I mean,
fair?
yes, I like the return of Horwitz, though. I think that's kind of in the sweet spot of what I was just talking about. It's real hard to find a guy that's got some real upside left, that has 4 or 5 years of control. I mean, I know that people make the joke it's about being cheap, but it's not going to be cheap forever. The hope is not that he's cheap forever. The hope is that he gets expensive. That you're looking for the years of control. That's what's sexy about that pick up. That's not that's not the same as like getting Lau or something. That's a 2-year answer, like we were talking about. I think a higher upside for right now answer too. Same with like Josh Naylor, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not more me knocking the Horowitz, because I like that. Everything you just said is part of the reason why they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just something that popped into my mind. I'm like, man, I maybe would have liked to have seen like, because I come back to Jared Jones. I know some people freak out about that. But he would have been the guy that I would have dangled first to see how much I could get back.
Right.
That's just my feeling on it.
I mean,
So,
there's other things you could do. Like you could probably, it looks like Nick Castellanos might be available from the Phillies. That would be a couple year thing. He can play the outfield fairly well, I guess. I mean, hell, they let Schwarber play. So like,
right.
um,
Hey, well, they let Schwarber bat leadoff too, so maybe
right.
Schwarber's the answer.
So I mean, there are some other guys you can pry, but the more you look at it, the more I think you kind of realize they might be better off grabbing one of those like leftover mid tier type free agents like Grichuk, or like seeing if you can go get Jerks and Profar. That might be a little rich, but I think that's a guy that you could probably stretch your belt on, and he's flexible enough that he doesn't have to stay in one spot. In fact, he could play shortstop if you really want to try it. He's getting a little old and hasn't done it in a while. But there's some different things you could do with a guy like that. Problem with him is he's put up a few good years. They're always in contract years. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
well,
I don't know what you do about that.
He's somebody that you wonder if these were his career years, right? Like,
yeah.
Then you worry about that part of it. Although I might just be more willing to do that than I would a Robert situation, just simply because like I have a little more faith in the fact that it might be something that is safer to acquire and cheaper to do so.
Yeah, why blow the asset? I agree, man. So, hey, that's brought to you by our friends over at Shop Yins. Check out all their cool stuff over there, shopyins.com. They've got our merch over there, as you know, Jim, and they've got all kinds of cool stuff that you can passively aggressively like your football and hockey teams with. And
right.
If something silly happens in the media, you might find a new t-shirt with like George Pickens hair or something. It's pretty cool. Go check it out. Good stuff. And Brad, good question.
Nothing ever silly happens with George Pickens. I don't know why you would think that there would not, and certainly not on a weekly basis. So,
right. And so, Jim, I feel like I've been answering this next question for like the better part of 2 years now. What do they do with Joey Bart and Andy Rodriguez and Henry Davis, right? And my go-to answer has quickly become, well, when all three of those bats look like they need to be in the lineup, I'll figure out where they play. Because that I don't think we are there on. I don't think we open up the season and all three of those guys need to be in this lineup. If they are, I will drop to my knees and thank God first. And then I'll point around the diamond and see how it falls, because
as will Ben Sherrington fall to his knees and thank God.
I mean, that'd be great. I mean, that's not a problem. And then, throw Jason DeLay in there too. I mean, he could be a capable backup. I think a couple things. People are probably too quick to hand this to Joey and expect that he's going to catch like 140 games or something. He's not. I doubt he'll even touch 100. I would be surprised if he played 100 games this year.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I have something interesting about Bart, but I think it was 69 games or 79 games he caught last year. So I would think that if you saw him up around 100 or 115, boy, that would be a lot.
I'd be shocked. He's never played more than 97.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. Like, I loved what we saw last year from him. He's never done that at this level before, not like that. And certainly not that consistently. I don't think that at the end of the day, he's somebody that you really want to be in the middle of your order. I think you're probably in trouble if he is. And defensively, to be honest, he's not that great. He's really not. He's not a ball framer. And he's got a great arm.
Yeah, he has a big arm.
Pop time's not that great. He doesn't do a terrific job of throwing runners out either. So
I like Joey Bart. I do.
So do I. I don't want to run him into the ground like I'm an arbitration expert or something.
Leave that to the Pirates. No, I do. I hope we see the same Joey Bart we did last year, but that really kind of came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
I know he had some pedigree, but none of that had showed up yet. It's interesting. I was like, I was looking at Bart before we did this, and I was like, man, to me, he just seems like a guy that, man, couldn't you put him at wouldn't it be tempting to give him a first base glove, and see what that might look like? And I stumbled onto something. Apparently in 2020, the Giants actually had him working some at first base. I think it was like instructional league or something like this. Now cover your ears, Pirate fans. Do you want to know why they were doing this? Because the Giants' organizational philosophy is positional flexibility. So they were giving him a little bit of time to work there. They wanted to now what I would assume happened was, I don't know, maybe A, didn't go well, or B, there were bigger problems with Joey Bart to worry about than having him worry about playing first base.
Right. And so Pirate Queen says, what do you think was Bart's catalyst? Well, he claims it was a swing change. You know how like when he swings the bat, how he doesn't follow through and have it like go all the way back around to his shoulder and everything? He kind of like leaves it in that like 3/4 position. That's something he specifically worked on with a trainer, and it keeps him from pulling off of the ball. So
and he was doing it great.
He started doing it in San Francisco. So it wasn't like it was brand new to here. And he didn't really do anything wrong besides sputter start, after getting called up and kind of get passed by the younger and cheaper for a little bit longer Patrick Bailey.
Yeah.
So
I really like what Joey Bart was doing at the plate, because to me he was simplifying things.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as the count got to where he felt they were going to start pitching him away, he wasn't trying to pull anything. So he was actually, and he's a big, strong guy. He doesn't need to pull anything to get the power that he has.
Right.
So he was doing something that I felt like, fine, okay, you're going to throw me inside. I'll wait, and then see what you come up with later in the at-bat, and I'll be patient about it. I think he did a great job of simplifying things.
And Doug says the list of guys we want unlocked, fixed, figured out is long. Welcome to building a team, man. Out of your system. Like, welcome to building a team out of your system. That's exactly what it looks like, no matter where you do it. Look at even like St. Louis, how they're struggling to onboard Jordan Walker and Wynn and everybody, like, and finding a place. And Newt Barr's injured all the time, and they're trying to find places for all these young kids, and they don't necessarily know where they fit. And it's the same kind of thing, same exact kind of thing. Every team goes through it. Look at how many guys Milwaukee jumps all over their diamond, finding places for them to play.
Sure.
You know, all teams do that.
Bart absolutely murdered left-handed pitching last year.
Which is funny because some of our other traditional murderers of left-handed pitching did not do so, like Brian Hayes and, like you said, Kutch earlier.
Kutch had an uncharacteristically bad year against lefties. So, like,
right.
That's why it popped into my mind about, man, if you could put Horwitz with Bart at first base, but then it becomes Henry has to be ready to do what Henry needs to do. And where's Endy fall into all this?
Well, Endy, for one thing, still coming back from UCL. You know, I watched him play last year at the very end of the season in Double-A Altoona. And, I mean, he looked like he was getting around pretty good and everything, but they were still babying him. They're still wrapping that arm in towels every time he goes into the dugout. They're still, you know, staying away from having him catch. You know, like that's coming this offseason where they're going to try to get him back into it. I think you're staring down the barrel at a AAA start for Endy, and I think it's wise. Like, we watched O'Neal Cruz come back, and he had almost a half season of major league experience under his belt before he went down with that injury. And we watched how bad he struggled last year. I don't want to try to do that to Endy. I don't want to jump him back to the bigs like he was established up here.
Yeah, I would say unless he just absolutely refuses to let you leave him out of the discussion because of a spring he's having.
If he shows up and he looks like everything's there, great.
Yeah,
but he hasn't even hit right-handed in over a year.
And earns that spot, you know, because he's just looked so good. I think that's definitely a path that you could see, and that maybe that you could, you know, advise for him to do.
Yeah. So he's going to be a little bit of a project. Henry Davis, I think there's room for him to make it like as the backup, and I use that term loosely because, again, I don't think Kutch is going to play even 6 days a week. I think he's going to be more like 4 or 5. That's going to leave a couple spots for a guy like Henry or Bart. You know, maybe they want to use Henry's skills behind the plate a little bit more. Then Bart, give him a rest and let him DH every once in a while. Maybe he's the guy that covers. Maybe one of them does get a first base mitt, like you said. But they're going to have to figure that out. If Henry's bat looks like it belongs here, all bets are off, man, for everybody. If they find a place that kid can play, like let's just dream up a scenario where they put him all around the diamond, and he sucks and he sucks and he sucks, and everywhere they put him, it's scarier than the last place they put him. Then they plop him at third base one day, and he's gobbling up everything left and right and firing balls across with that cannon of an arm, and holy hell, he looks like a savant. Like he's one of those like people that gets hit by lightning and can play piano. All right, so there he is over at third base.
I'm still waiting for Lightning to unlock some type of artistic ability in me, Gary.
The point is, though, like, guess where his job will be if the bat makes it imperative. That's the thing. Getting him enough time that he can prove the bat is imperative. That's what's got to happen.
Well, let's just say Henry Davis shows up and looks like the number 1 pick. Let's just say he's hitting like Joey Bart did last year. And Joey Bart continues doing what he's doing. Is it a plausible scenario? I don't know. But if it did happen, what would you do then?
I think I would continue to split time between the two of them because, again, I don't think that either of them is anywhere near accustomed to what accounts for a full starting load for a catcher. I don't expect anyone to be Yadier Molina. So, like, let's just say a normal starting catcher is 125 to 130 games, right? Mm-hmm. Somewhere in there. If that's a normal load, I don't think either of them are anywhere near ready to handle that or have done it.
Probably not, but if you had their bats playing well,
then you're having them bounce off each other in DH. Yeah, again, maybe one of them has to go to first. Maybe one of them has to go to right field, and you have to be like, hey, look, Juan Soto plays out there too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you can be a terrible defender if your bat's good enough. Like that.
Yeah.
If Henry can live up to the 1-1 side on the offense, it doesn't matter. They'll find a place for him.
Yeah.
And again, it's wishful thinking to think that either he or Bart are going to be healthy all season. Neither of them have ever done it. So I'm not worried about it till I have to be, is my point. Let's see. Bruce Nesbitt here says Taylor Ward from the Angels can be had. Burrows, Jeb, and Lonnie White. Absolutely would I not ever give up 3 prospects for Taylor Ward, let alone 3 prospects that I think actually might have a future. Lonnie White, okay, he's getting long in the tooth, and you're going to have to protect him if he doesn't take a jump this year. That you could get by with that. Jeb is on the rise. No way. Burrows, you're going to need this year. So, no. And Taylor Ward is only a rental. That's way mismatched. Way mismatched.
Yeah. Taylor Ward would have.
Now, if you met like one of those 3, okay, I'll talk about it. I could do that. But
Taylor
zero
Ward
chance
would
I'd give up 3.
A much better player for me to even consider something like that. I mean, everybody has their differences of opinion.
I'd have to have him a little longer than that too.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the outfield and the catching position. Again, it sucks to kind of have to shortchange that because until one of them proves they need to be here, it's so hard to sit here and whine about having 3 guys who could. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Second base is interesting because it should be Nick Gonzalez's job. He should be the front runner, right? But a lot of the chatter and a lot of the whining about guys that aren't out there are, I don't know, second baseman or second baseman that fans dream up could be shortstops, you know, and I don't know that that's a position I want to upgrade, Jim. I'm kind of excited to see a little more of Nick Gonzalez. And if not, I'm kind of happy I have like a Jared Triolo floating around too.
Yeah, look, to me, Nick Gonzalez is the type of guy that right now you absolutely do want to see if he's going to take that next step forward. Like don't cut and run on that right now. You know, like he did enough last year to suggest that he is able to make adjustments. You know, he is able to be somebody that I think he surprised both of us. I thought he was in trouble. I really did. Now, the power, maybe he sacrificed a little bit of power to do what he was doing, which was putting the ball in play more. But don't you want to see if it can kind of come together this year? He would be the last guy that I would move on from. And by the way, you've invested a lot in this guy, clearly.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the one guy I would not want to. Not saying it's going to work out, that I'm a total believer, but he surprised me last year.
I would agree there. How about shortstop? Isaiah Kiner-Falefa.
Yeah.
Man, I'm not happy with it. But if you ask me, Jim, the best choice on this roster right now to be the starting shortstop is Jared Triolo. I think he can handle the position defensively. I think he's Jordy Mercer. I think I see his floor right around Jordy Mercer. And I think that might be good enough to at least get you to something better. I know they're not going to start that way. I think they're probably going to go with Isaiah, but I could see Jared Triolo taking that position over by the end of the season.
Well, it's interesting because Triolo is somebody that they need. If you could count on one guy to 100% make this roster, I think every year people try to find a way to put Jared Triolo off of it. He's too important. He's too positionally important. You don't know what Hayes is going to be, if he's going to look normal or if he's going to need to fill in there. IKF is somebody that, like, are you really expecting IKF to play 150 games at shortstop this year?
I'm fairly confident they expect him to handle the lion's share. He had good offensive numbers last year in Toronto before he came here. He was injured when he got dealt for. Brief stop in the minors, comes up to the majors, didn't hit like he did in Toronto, but again, that's normal coming back from a couple months off, right? And struggled to adjust. Towards the end of the season, he started making better contact and everything. He's a fine fielder.
Having a career year offensively.
He's a fine fielder. He's won a Gold Glove. It's not like he's not good. It's just his arm isn't necessarily made for shortstop anymore. His range isn't what we're accustomed to with Cruz at all. And that's not great. When and if Hayes is back, it'll minimize that a little bit because Hayes makes up for it. But Triolo's not exactly a drop-off, and I didn't like what I saw with him at shortstop last year. I actually thought he made more throwing errors than I was hoping for from somebody that's there to be a lockdown defender. And I didn't think he was as slick at starting the double plays as some of the other guys we've seen try there. Even I thought Nick Gonzalez was better there, to be honest, as far as starting the shortstop end of the double plays. So I don't know. Also, he's a one-year solution. And I'm answering a question that I didn't even put up here. What's the knock on IKF is what Doug said. He's a one-year solution is the big knock. The other thing is he's never, ever, ever hit the way he did last year with Toronto.
And the one time anybody did try to play him at shortstop as the legitimate shortstop, it didn't go so well. Like, it wasn't terrible, but not to the level that you would hope it would be. So, do I think he brings a lot of like little things and intangibles and things like that? Sure, but I don't know if that's enough to like get me all warm and fuzzy either. Gary, is Liover Peguero anywhere in the conversation anymore? Are people forgetting about him at this point?
He should be. First of all, happy birthday to him too. It was just his birthday last week. But he officially turned 24, Jim. So, he's close to the league. He's bulked up. I fear that he's bulking himself up out of the position potentially. His upper half is very big now. I'm just saying it's noticeable. And the power hasn't really translated yet. I don't know. He's probably your best internal answer before you get to Connor Griffin. Maybe Xiangxie Sheng, if he takes a jump. He stalled in Double-A last year. I think they're going to start him in Triple-A, but I don't know. Alika Williams is still hanging around. If they want to just have a defensive stalwart backup, which you could see them do. They do that all the time, waste a position on a bench spot on something like that. I could see that. It might not be the worst idea in the world to have a glove first guy, though, if you're going to have the motley crew that it looks like we're going to go in with, right?
Yeah. Peguero, he's only 24. I would it does seem though to me like this is kind of a make or break year for him.
It's his last option year, so it absolutely is. And it's also what makes it deathly hard to trade him. Because you're basically at this point, he's Hoy Park or Diego Castillo. Somebody that everyone always thought would, that never did, and you're selling him to someone else that thinks they can.
Right. It'll be interesting to see what if any opportunity he gets going into spring too. Like, so just a thought. Seems like people forget about him at this point.
Yeah, I don't think so. First base, Spencer Horwitz for sure. That's why they got him. It's looking more and more like he was one of the better options out there too. Like when you really start looking around at some of the people that are hanging out there with obvious problems, there's obviously something off about Goldschmidt, right? Nobody wants to touch him right now. He's talked to a lot of people.
Did the Yankees end up getting him? I could have sworn I saw something at some point where they did.
I didn't see that. Maybe. Did they actually finalize it?
I want to say, let's see.
I heard they were flirting with him.
I don't know. Now I'm looking. I don't know.
If you look up his name on Google and it ain't the first thing a Yankees signing, then it didn't happen.
Maybe it was a fever dream, Gary.
Yeah, I don't think he's gotten signed yet.
I wouldn't touch Paul Goldschmidt at all.
No. So it feels like Spencer Horwitz is at least an okay answer. It's a good shot. Their backups on the roster now that they got rid of like guys like Connor Joe. You have to consider Brian Reynolds. They've outwardly said that he is going to see time there.
Goldschmidt 1 year, $12.5 million to the Yankees. So it did happen.
10 minutes later.
sorry, man. I was thinking I was crazy, but anyways.
Well, what were you
saying, Gary? Because I was ignoring you, trying to prove myself that I was right.
Connor Joe's gone, so Brian Reynolds is probably your best one. They said he's going to play there a little bit. So there's that. That said, they've got holes in the outfield. I don't know if they can spare him anymore. So that leaves you with like your Jared Triolo, Billy Cook, Nick York, Andy Rodriguez is an option. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa can play there too. He has and has done okay there. I guess you could even start talking about guys like Andrew McCutchen, Henry Davis, and Joey Bart. Emmanuel Valdez might be able to. A little short as well, but can play there, has played there. And if you really want to stretch, you got Nick Camillo down there in Double-A. He looks like he's going to be pretty strong. So
we're stretching. I think we might be stretching that Andrew McCutchen ever plays another inning in the field at this point.
Just saying, man. Just throwing him out there.
I hear you.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like first base feels to me like almost just shut up and let's see what Horwitz does. I think everything else is just a discussion. Yeah, Derek Hall is Jake Lamb, brother. Sorry. I mean, that's what he is. I'm gonna treat him the same way I treated Jake Lamb. I'm gonna laugh at people all season long that think he's an option until at the end of the season when I'm proven right that they weren't planning on using him at all.
I just got used to just ignoring the Jake Lamb stuff. I just felt like
he's a replacement for Trey Cabbage. That's all he is. Just somebody they want to play in AAA.
Trey Cabbage, thank you for your service.
Yes, I'm really happy you were here, sir. So yeah, Jim, that's what I got on kind of like around the horn. I feel like they've got a lot of options all over the place, a ton of questions all over the place. We didn't even talk about third base. It's absolutely going to be Ke'Bryan Hayes. And we've got tons of backups there. You got Jared Triolo. You got Nick Gonzalez, I think, showed well there. Nick York surprised me over there. Isaiah can play there. Tristan Gray, if you really want to get crazy. There's another Jake Lamb for you.
Yeah. Yeah. You brought up Nick York. He's somebody this year that I'm interested. My interest is peaked. But
he does not have a position. He's another guy that could go all over the place. The guys in Boston were shocked to hear that he plays outfield for us. They did not think he had that kind of arm. I thought his arm looked fine. Billy Cook interests me.
Yeah, we in the little time York was here, I think he got 7 games at second base.
Yeah.
One at third, one in left, 2 in right field. Yeah. So, but again, it's another option. We just talk about Nick Gonzalez. Maybe Nick Gonzalez takes a step back. Maybe that was it. At least you have Nick York to at least throw into the mix as somebody that it's a far better situation than it has been in that regard.
Yeah, they didn't acquire him for no reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like,
sure.
All right, let's take another quick break, come back, and then let's just finish up with one more quick topic here I got.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports. Okay, so somebody I follow from that he's a Tigers fan, but talk to him pretty regularly. Ben Verlander on X, he put out a kind of like a summation of how he feels as a Tigers fan. And when I read it, it just kind of smacked me in the face, and I wanted to make sure you guys got to hear it too. It sounds so familiar. The more I think about it, the more I get angrier and angrier. What a treat it was to watch that Tigers run last year. They also have the best pitcher in baseball. Debatable, right? But sounds familiar, right? They're ready to win. How can you be in charge and not see how much a big signing would fire up this fan base? It's identical. This stuff's going on all over the place. In Boston, they're $20 million underneath the tax threshold. That statement could have come from one of them. They're literally screaming bloody murder that the only thing that their team has done is trade for Garrett Crochet. The only thing they did was trade for arguably one of the top 5 pitchers in the game right now. And also sign Aroldis Chapman, which was our gigantic swing of the century last year as a free agent, right? And they even got the kid from LA, Walker Buehler, that we definitely wouldn't be looking at as a shaky element, right? We'd be looking at that as like, man, Walker Buehler, here comes the division. Right?
Different standards, I think, in Boston, or different expectations, maybe.
But Detroit, it really struck me because, here's a team that they have done a lot of the things that Jim and I have kind of put forth in the past might make us happy if they did here. They've extended a superstar, Miguel Cabrera, Hall of Famer, through the end of his ridiculous career that should have ended 2 or 3 years before it did, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they paid him a butt ton of money to do that. They've had big stars there. They've taken big swings on the free agent market, bad ones like Javi Baez. They've had draft picks look like they were going to be great. They've gotten number 1 picks racked up. They've got them all lined up. They got slammed down by Tommy John surgery, and somehow this team put enough pieces together last year to sneak into the dance. And immediately the fan base is like, how can you not do more?
Well, you know
what I mean?
Even if you break it down to like division, right? Like it's the same kind of scenario there where like not viewed as a very strong division. It's certainly there for a team that wants to like push the envelope. At least fans think that, right? That like it's comparable with even like divisional competition. So
yeah. I think like when you're in the AL Central, even if you can spend, you probably are a little more frugal than some of the other teams. Like there's 2 Chicago teams in both the Centrals, right? Both of those teams should have money in theory. They're both in major media markets. They both have been forever. And they should be able to spend a lot more money and just take these divisions every time they want them. But because they're in these cheap divisions, well, why do I want to spend all that money to win this division? I don't need to do that, right? So they kind of try to cut corners.
We get back to the bigger problem in baseball, right? Yeah, and Detroit, look, 86 wins last year, and they had to really get on a roll to get those 86 wins. And then I glanced really quickly. It looks like their projected payroll right now is sitting around $80 million. Sound familiar? So
it's probably close to where it's been finished too.
Right. So yeah, it sounded like, and I'm not disagreeing with it. It's just that it's not exclusive to Pittsburgh.
It's a league-wide problem is the point. It's not just one bad owner. It's not just one team doing everything wrong. It's a systemic failure in the game that creates this environment. It really is. And you have certain owners that make it worse. We have one of them. But even if you don't, like I was just saying, in Detroit, they've done some of those things we've talked about. It hasn't really gotten the results. Like Doug says here in the chat, like he focuses more on the GM hires, dependable paths to being smarter, less on players, more on moving the organization development ahead of others. This is where we are not doing well in year 5. Sure. But Detroit is on their 3rd GM since they've tried to do this too. You get what I mean? Like all these markets are basically trying to thread a needle, and when they don't manage to thread that needle, some of these organizations will step up and do things they're uncomfortable with to kind of bypass the needle and keep going on their journey a little bit. Other ones just go, well, shit, we missed. Let's start over. This is one of those ones where they go, well, shit, we missed. Let's start over. That's the problem. I mean, you can blame the GM all you want. He doesn't make the greatest moves. I just think you're always looking for something that is such a niche of a niche. Like we sit here and look through the trade market, Jim, and we start checking off all the boxes that have to be ticked before they can make a trade, right? You need like a major league return. You need a team that is willing to eat salary if any salary is coming back. You need a team that is deficient in one area and laden in the other. And they've got to be in a certain stage of their build. And they, all these things have. I couldn't find you either. Is my point.
They're not in your division, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah. When you start doing that, look, if Ben Sherrington, I think if Ben Sherrington had the money to go do things, he'd do it. I think he's trying to do a job. It's not to defend him. I'm just saying he has a narrow path. He has a narrow runway.
Yeah, and he's going to get more money. It's just it couldn't be clearer. I mean, it will get up to about $100 million this year, close to it, if not a little over. And then arbitration takes over, man. Like arbitration and pay bumps for a lot of these players start kicking in on their contracts. You'll be up around. They'll get up around 130, 140 before this is all done. And Paul Skeens, especially when he starts it in arbitration, he's going to escalate quickly if they haven't done something smart before then, which is a topic for another day. But like, it's going to happen. It's just not. It's not going to be like let me spend 50 more on the way there. I think he's perfectly happy just waiting it out. This is all part of their plan. They just, if anything, miscalculate how long fans are going to deal with it. Every time. Because it's always right around now when fans start losing their mind.
Sure, everyone starts getting impatient, and I get it.
Yeah, us too.
I
mean, it's not like,
I texted you. I texted you earlier today. I'm like, man, I wish we had something, newsworthy to roll with, like a trade, a signing of any type of caliber that's worth being talked about. But yeah, I think there are a lot of teams right now. You said thread the needle. There are plenty of teams right now. That's what they're doing. Like even the ones that have been really good at threading the needle still haven't thread it completely. So
yeah, and we're watching a whole new St. Louis Cardinals. Like I mean, they're being picked by some to potentially be like in that grouping of like the worst in baseball, like down with Colorado and whatnot. I'll believe it when I see it.
But there's we gotta wrap this up, but maybe there are some Steelers Cardinals parallels here. Right?
Yeah, maybe like being okay all the time isn't necessarily good enough either, right?
Yeah, and you can't, maybe you don't even feel that a rebuild is something that you can do or that your fans would be okay with. And so, yeah, so there might be some parallels there.
Well, everybody, good stuff. Good topic. I mean, I hope like at least you can look through the roster with us and not feel like it's like a barren wasteland. I think they've got a better crop overall of players to utilize this year. I feel like they should be able to fill out a lineup pretty easily. I think they have some holes. I think they need some stuff, but I also think this is a team that should still be on the rise. I really feel that way, especially with the pitching staff getting better. And I don't think they're done. So we'll revisit it, Jim, but that's a good baseline for where they are.
I think so. I think, that's for what we have to go on right now. We get another month into this thing, then that starts to become more of a concern. But it's January 2nd. We'll see where it goes.
I mean, I think I've been a fan of this team, I think, officially since like 84. That's when I can probably really remember watching games with 5 or 6 years old. I think I've seen 3 teams that I 100% felt were World Series contenders in all that time. 2015, I thought they could. And 91 and 92, I thought they could. But that's about it. This doesn't come around very often, and it's always come from this exact pain, whether you remember it or not. It really has. That's the way it is here. It sucks. But this team will continue to get better year over year from here on until at least Paul Skeens is gone. So I think I'm still relatively happy with the progression, and I would hope that we're still in a territory where even if they do replace the GM, it's not a rebuild. It's just maybe a refocus or a reposition or a different angle on something,
Yeah, you just gave me a good idea for a poll. It's going to be about expectations for this year. I want to see where people are. I'm going to give you some reasonable choices, and we'll fit that in next week because I'm gonna check the temperature right now.
Do it to it, brother. All right, without further ado, let's get out of here. Thanks, everybody. Toss it off to bed.
Thanks, guys.
Let's go, Bucks!
Yeah, buddy.